Hello, my name is Jessica Foley, and today I'll be presenting on rhetorical criticism. To start, we'll have a general overview of what is rhetorical criticism. In order to understand rhetorical criticism, a key is to understand what rhetoric itself is. This is a primary tool of persuasion. It's studied often and considered paramount in the School of Communication as well as many other fields. In the 1900s, it became defined based on speakers and their speeches. Croucher and Crone Mills, 2015, page 313, as that was the main way that people used rhetoric. But now it is considered a standalone discipline and huge in the communication business. It has been studied since the ancient Greeks. Croucher and Crone Mills, 2015, pages 311 to 313. Rhetorical criticism itself has some very key elements. Rhetorical criticism is similarly one means through which we expose our structure of reasoning, acknowledge the agency of our interlocutors, and sustain our commitment to the ongoing practice of argumentation itself. Brown, 2007, page 109. This has three of the key elements. That's reasoning, being within a discussion or discourse with an artifact, and using that in argumentation or persuasion. In Croucher and Crone Mills, 2015, page 318, they say that if your interest is how communication can shape perceptions of reality, that you would find a great deal of strength in rhetorical criticism. It mixes descriptive and normative elements and combines interpretation with judgment, according to Zarevsky, 2008, page 629. It has dual processes that make it very different than just regular criticism. As you can see here, rhetorical criticism versus popular criticism. Popular seeks to influence the general public's opinion. Croucher and Crone Mills, 2015, page 314, which is different from rhetorical criticism, which evaluates based on rhetorical theories and principles. Croucher and Crone Mills, 2015, page 312. A critic must be able to make choices about which specific rhetorical constructs will and will not be essential in order to unlock certain aspects of the texts. Kellum, 2014, page 31. This highlights the key scholarly aspect of rhetorical criticism versus general persuasion. Our next section is rhetorical analysis research subjects and where we see rhetorical criticism used. Where you can use it is very varied. There are 5 canons of rhetoric that are primarily used for critiquing speeches, as we said, Croucher and Crone Mills, 2015, page 315. But it's also used in framing, establishing context, and deriving meaning of events and cultures. It is much more broadly seen today in the world of communication in general, although it does have a very strong history in speeches and speech critique. This is for some criticism suggests condemnation or fault finding, but most critics see themselves as analysts, not complainers. Zarevsky, 2008, page 633. The analysis part is key to this type of criticism. The types of research. According to Zarevsky, 2008, page 629, communication resides on the cusp of literature and science. There are many different research subjects that now use rhetorical criticism. The sciences, philosophy, general communications, religion. You see these things throughout history, throughout ancient Greece to today, and it has a rising significance as we study culture and communication. Things that you can see are speeches, sermons, essays, interviews, narratives, television and media, public demonstration, politics, etc. Croucher and Crone Mills, 2015, page 313. There are also many practical applications to using rhetorical criticism. You can use this in your everyday life. If you're in school, you're a student, you can use it in your scholarly work in order to engage with a certain text. In your personal relationships, if you're trying to understand someone else's point of view or understand someone else's interests. Interviews in work life, you can get a lot of insight from work-life culture by taking a more scholarly outlook on that culture. Sacred texts throughout history have been used with rhetorical criticism in order to find deeper meaning. Art and leisure, if there's a piece of artwork or music that you enjoy, using rhetorical criticism can have a different point of view for you. And anywhere that content in general can be interpreted, this can be applied. Our third section is how rhetorical criticism finds information. So the general process follows this basic 6-step structure. First, you want to find a description of an artifact with your justification for why you chose that. I'll explain what exactly an artifact is shortly. Next, you want a description of a situation where you're going to use this artifact, where this happened. 3 is the explanation of your specific rhetorical approach. 4, you can perhaps have a section with other similar studies to back up what you're saying, but you don't want to rely solely on other people's work. 5 is your personal critique of that artifact using your rhetorical approach that you listed. And 6, you want to have your discussion of the implications of your findings. And this according to Croucher and Crone Mills, 2015, page 319. A rhetorical artifact, as I said before, is an artifact. It's anything that is tangible as an element of communication. For example, possible artifacts I listed before are the things like speeches and sermons and essays, interviews, narratives. Anything that is proof that communication has transpired. That's Croucher and Crone Mills, 2015, page 313. This is a key element. You can start this process with listing out the things that you do or do not enjoy in order to grasp what will be interesting and what you have a strong opinion on as you start this process. You must have a good reason for selecting the topic that you choose, and you must be able to use the criticism in your work, the rhetorical criticism. Croucher and Crone Mills, 2015, page 314. So more on the process, you want to assume that the works are not transparent in meaning, implications, or significance, and you must make clear the underlying dynamics of the work. Zarefsky, 2008, page 634. This could also be considered a literature review. Now the author of this work turns to a method section or results in discussion. Kellum, 2014, page 31. Other things to keep in mind are your elements of invention, organization, style, delivery, and memory, according to Croucher and Crone Mills, 2015, page 315. There are many different theories, different ways you can approach this. Some I can list here are social movement criticism, genre criticism, cluster criticism, feminist criticism, Marxist criticism, cultural criticism, ideological criticism, and postmodern criticism. Croucher and Crone Mills, 2015, page 318. An example is if you were going to study Orange is the New Black, the TV show, and you were going to take a feminist viewpoint, that would be a type of rhetorical criticism. One covered is metaphor theories. Metaphors are useful while studying rhetorical criticism because such analysis necessary requires one to investigate what the content presents openly and also what the content obscures. Kellum, 2014, page 29. Considering the metaphor's critical route to identifying core values within speech performance. Osborne, 1867, Kellum, 2014, page 28. That shows you how important it is to understand that there are deeper meanings to these texts, and that's why you're studying them, and that's why you're taking a critical eye to them. Another way is the fantasy theory that was developed by Dr. Ernest Borman from the University of Minnesota. This talks about how communication can shape perceptions of reality. Croucher and Crone Mills, 2015, page 318. It focuses on this concept of rhetorical vision, in which a group can develop a shared viewpoint. This works best with multiple artifacts and finding similar patterns. You see it on social media and Facebook, where there's a common vocabulary, there's a common interests. Croucher and Crone Mills, 2015, page 318. Our fourth section is researcher preparation, decisions that one must make for conducting a study. So rhetorical criticism is used mainly to persuade, and a claim should not be arbitrarily made as it is interpretive. you have to spend time making sure you can persuade. The researcher must be able to defend their analysis and criticism, defend the standards or methods used, and their effectiveness of the criticism. Croucher and Crone-Mills, 2015, page 314. Providing insight to others through your own lens and analysis in a persuasive manner is the overall goal of rhetorical criticism. There's also the Neo-Aristotelian method of persuasion. He separates it into two different sections. The inartistic ways of persuasion, which are laws, statistics, oaths, and contracts. Croucher and Crone-Mills, 2015, page 315. They can be used in an argument, but they're not as malleable, they're not as useful because they're so static. Whereas you can also use artistic proofs to persuade your audience. He separates these into three different sections. Logos, which is reasoning and arguments and use of evidence. Ethos, which is credibility and character. Pathos, which is attempts to emotionally connect with the audience, i.e., get them to sympathize. Croucher and Crone-Mills, 2015, page 315. So these three things are completely different than law, statistics, and oaths because they are not completely static and each person is able to interpret things in different ways. And you can use that to your advantage and you have a little bit more space to work with it because you can read the audience that you're trying to persuade. When researching, you have to be careful of the application section of a speech. This is the so what now? Where the method is the explanation of materials, the application is really where you develop your own opinion. This is in Kellum 2014, page 32. To issue a critical judgment is therefore to give expression to oneself, according to Brown 2007, page 114. Our next section is rhetorical criticism strengths. Its uses. As seen here, the boundaries between the various rhetorical approaches are subjective and concepts may cross over between approaches. Croucher and Crone-Mills, 2015, page 318, is not a cut and dry. There can be topics and criticisms that intertwine and play upon each other, which is very useful when studying something because you can make a deep and varied argument. Brown says you must respect free judgment, risk failure, and assume responsibility for the outcome of the argument. These are all valuable skills and strengths in a person's character when developing character. There's also great importance in engaging in rhetorical criticism because in the process we learn who we are and where we stand. And this is why we argue according to Brown, 2007, page 116. Without fully capturing the richness of individual cases, one can still generalize. Zarevsky, 2008, 635. He's talking about how you can use an example of rhetorical criticism in order to say something about a larger culture. And in this way, you build community, identify with the audience, and have models for appreciation. Zarevsky, 2008, page 638. The value of rhetorical critics is that rhetorical critics may be more likely than social scientists to presume that a particular instance of communication makes a difference. Zarevsky, 2008, page 637. Engaging in a text in this way and involving your own opinions and your own experiences often, according to Zarevsky, opens up the mind of the critic and able to see the community as a whole. Rhetorical criticism calls attention also to the polysemy of language and this intersectionality. Zarevsky, 2008, page 637. There's also great value for individuals. They can find their own voice in rhetorical criticism. That's what makes it so special. It's not systemized. You're empowered to say really smart things about communicative artifacts that are perhaps not so apparent to others. Kellum, 2014, page 37. There's this kind of persuasion that comes in discourse, in discussion, in finding out things and seeing things in different lights. And there's also the power to change our beliefs, attitudes, and actions, and even alter how we understand the world around us. Croucher and Crone-Mills, 2015, page 312. Lastly, the rhetorical criticism drawbacks. Kellum talks a lot about the drawbacks at a pedagogical level when teaching students how to write speeches and engage in persuasion. He says that it fails at the linguistic level more than at the structural or procedural level, and that metaphors are too often used, and students focus too much on that and not on actually what they're studying. Another problem is that one may sterilize their artifacts to remain true to point one because they're enslaved to their theoretical perspectives. And that was Kellum 2014, page 28, and Kellum 2014, page 33. And that this tight structure that has come from rhetorical criticism might actually hinder your analysis. It also says the communication discipline moved beyond these neo-Aristotelian models because they kept leading to conclusions that were predictable and formulaic in nature. Kellum 2014, page 28. If you stick to the original classic structure, you might end up with an original classic idea or outlook, and it's important to keep developing this kind of critique in order to foster some kind of change. And he says that often students are forced in scientific analysis to have research questions that, and then a student presents it, a question answerable without analysis. Kellum 2014, page 29. So they don't dig deeper, they just find a question that would be easy to back up without their own critiques. According to Brown 2007, page 111, rhetorical critiques often fail to meet the standard of free will. He has the idea through philosophy that rhetorical critiques, if taken at face value, are strong-arming or relying on scholars, Brown 2007, page 113, and that these critics are often closed-minded and forceful in their interpretations and explanations. In this way, the relationship between the critic and the reader is often coercive, and there isn't much of a discourse as there should be. Thank you very much for listening. This is my Works Cited page. I have Brown and his article, Rhetorical Criticism and the Challenges of Bilateral Argument. Croucher and Crome Mills, Understanding Communication Research Methods, a Theoretical and Practical Approach. Kellum, Reimagining Metaphor and Rhetorical Criticism, and Zarefsky, Knowledge Claims in Rhetorical Criticism. Thank you so much.